awareness is the missing piece. Anybody that's stuck, they're missing awareness. Anybody that's broke or sad or sick or awareness is what they're missing. And that's what all those books gave me. You know, You Are a Badass and Train Your Brain and Creating Money in Artist Way. They didn't give me the answers. They gave me awareness.
Today, I have a super great guest for y'all on the Full of Ourselves podcast. Her name is Melissa Yoder. She is an unschooling mom and empowered entrepreneur. She runs her own business, helping women be happier, healthier, and wealthier. Today, we talk about all things money mindset, shifting your beliefs, astrology, human design, and all the things that have shifted for her over the past 7 years. We also talk today about developing more self-trust, which is something I'm a huge advocate for, and I'm super excited to bring that topic to you today. All right, so let's meet Melissa.
Our relationship started through when I was putting together my retreat. So back in 2018, I decided I was going to design and host and do all this retreat stuff. And a lot has happened since that transformative retreat. Right now, my main focus is unschooling my kids. That's like my 24/7 full-time job is being a mom. And I also have my skincare business, which is growing every single day. And now I have an Airbnb business. So I'm traveling, I'm momming, I'm entrepreneuring, I'm doing all the things, and just with a growth mindset. As long as I'm moving forward, I feel like I'm on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I saw the unschooling thing in your bio as well, and I'd love to hear more about what that means to you.
Yeah, so I have my degree in education. I went to the University of Texas, and all I ever wanted to be was a teacher. Like from when I was a kid, I would play school and dream about being a teacher. And I knew exactly what I needed to get there. I babysat, I worked at kids' places to get all the recommendations and the relationships and the internships. And I got hired a couple weeks before I graduated. So it was all very lined up for me. And then once I actually started teaching, I taught in East Austin. It was Del Valley School District. It's rough, man. Like it's really hard. It's hard emotionally, physically, mentally, politically, all the things. It's just absolutely draining. And I loved my kids. I loved my families. I never missed a day of work unless I was sick, which actually happened a lot when I was a teacher. But it was very soul sucking. Like there's no gentler way to put it. So when I got pregnant with my daughter, it was unexpected, unplanned, and I got pregnant in January. So I finished out the school year, and I actually was really, really determined to go back to teaching. I looked at daycares. I got her on waiting list before she was even born. And in August, I was about 8 weeks out from my due date. In August, I was like, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can start the school year, fall in love, have a baby, fall in love, say goodbye to the kids I love, say goodbye to my kid that I haven't even met yet, that I know I'm going to love. And I felt so torn. So I packed up my classroom 8 months pregnant and decided I was going to be a stay-at-home mom with no other plan. My marriage anniversary was yesterday. We got married when I was 8 months pregnant. So it was actually
Congrats.
7 years ago, like today, that this all went down.
So cool.
Yeah, it's really cool how that's
Full
happening.
circle.
Full circle. And the unschooling thing, I know you didn't ask about all that, but the unschooling thing came about from a TV show, a reality TV show. Ryan and I, my husband, we were watching something one day, and it was about the smartest kids in the world. And, some of them went to private schools, some of them were homeschooled. And I heard one of these families mention unschooling. And I just thought it was such a fascinating method of learning where they don't consume a curriculum. They don't log a certain amount of hours or finish a certain amount of workbooks. It's very um, curiosity led, and it can be parent led, but it's more often not child led. And then the parent provides all the resources and avenues for diving into that topic. So, for example, my son is obsessed with dinosaurs. He's only 4, but we go to museums, we travel and look at fossils, we read books, we watch shows. Today we're going to a Jurassic play performance, like all the things about what he's interested in. And what ends up happening is they end up learning because they actually
Want to be
desire,
there.
yeah, they have this desire to learn. So
Yeah, they're
learning
following their
only,
innate curiosity. Yeah, and
yeah,
kids want to learn. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
so
And
cool.
there's only 3 steps to learning: observation, desire, and practice. So if they don't
Mm,
have a desire, they're not going to learn anything. So all these
right.
kids sitting at a desk in school, unless they desire to be learning whatever it is that they're learning, they're not actually retaining it, which is why a lot of us leave school not remembering half of what we learned because we
Learned.
have no
Yeah,
desire for it. So that's where unschooling came
totally.
from.
I love that. That's so exciting. I was actually homeschooled for like most of my childhood. So
Oh,
like
nice.
we did have a curriculum, but like my mom was pretty flexible on it and was like yeah, follow your interest basically. Like I could play piano for like 3 hours and that counted for like schoolwork, you know? It's like as long as
Love
I got
that.
my reading and my whatever done, like I got the stuff she felt like she needed to feel secure as a mom teacher, you know? She was
Yeah.
like, if you get these things done, like, yeah, spend all day playing piano or like whatever, I wrote a little theater screenplay like as an eighth grader,
Love
like
that.
just like cool stuff that I was interested in. And I feel like so my girlfriend is starting a teaching job right now actually, so she
Oh, yeah.
started a few days ago, and already like there's so many things that are like, man, like it just reminds me, like I forget because I don't have a kid, I don't have any relationship to the education system right now, but
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, we have them sit in these classrooms all day learning like arithmetic that like you don't need to know on a daily basis, especially now with the internet. Like it was true back then, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's even more true now. Like God forbid the internet goes out, but like we have bigger problems than if like you can divide by like 5 or whatever.
Right.
um
Exactly.
yeah, so it's like it really is just like teaching them to be like slaves to the workforce, and so I think that we need an entirely new education system, but I think that's really cool that you're approaching that on your own as well. How do you like
Thanks.
balance knowing what you feel like you need to impart to them, or like what you need to make sure they hit? Is there anything like from a curriculum or like from anything like that that you're like, I do want to make sure they're prepared for X, or are you just basing it on what they want also? Because like you don't need to prepare them for college if they don't really want to go to college, and like college is
Right.
like its own thing. I don't know. So how do you balance that kind of?
Yeah. From my experience, if a child can read, they can learn anything. If
Yeah,
a child can use technology, they can learn anything. So, my daughter,
true.
since she was 3 years old, knows how to Google search. She knows how to Alexa or Siri search. She knows how to read on a fantastic level. I haven't had her formally tested. She's about to be
Yeah,
7, and she's reading chapter books, and she's in chats, and she's
I believe
reading
it.
as the chat's flying by. And I'm like, she's a speed reader, man. But it's
Yeah.
as I think as long as they can read, they have problem solving skills, and they can
Mm-hmm.
they can work
Figure out
through
how to
their
break
own,
down. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and work through their own frustration. So, like a tolerance
Mm.
level to working through their own feelings. I think social emotional
Yeah,
knowledge and skills is way more important than
way
like
more
the
important.
arithmetic and history and science. And
Totally.
a lot of that's
Right.
skewed
Because if you
anyway.
can coach yourself through learning anything, then you can learn anything. So you know how to
Yeah.
like break down what you want to learn, coach yourself through what you want to learn. Yeah, I think that's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, teach them how to ask questions and be curious from a really young age. Like my 4-year-old, he will sit there and ask me, why? Well, what do you think about that? And why is that that way? And is this similar to this? And like he was playing earlier. He made a little sandwich. My daughter made a sandwich out of blocks, and he took the sandwich and he was like, this is a carnivore and he's going to eat the meat sandwich. And I'm like, he knows that because of dinos.
Yeah.
Whereas other kids are like, what are you talking about?
Totally. Well, it's also insane. Like, I bet your 7-year-old reads better than the ninth graders that my girlfriend is walking in to teach right now. Because, like, some of them are struggling to spell extremely basic words. So it's like we're not
Oh,
even
yeah.
succeeding at teaching them the things that we're supposed to be teaching them or whatever. Like, oh,
Yeah.
it's really scary.
Yeah, we're teaching them how to take a test and perform and cooperate and do a lot of things, like you said, like get in line for the workforce, so to speak. But that brings me to my thoughts and feelings on money. Like growing
Yeah.
up, I was always taught like you have to have a job to make money because you need money to live. And now I'm teaching my kids like money is energy. If you're doing what you love and you're showing up and you're
Mm-hmm.
taking care of your own stuff, money's going to show up for you in ways that you don't have to understand. You just have to be willing to receive it and go from there. So
Yeah.
that's changed a lot
That's going to be
too.
huge for them to have been hearing that since they were born, you know?
Yeah. Hmm.
Like, that's going to be so cool. Tell me about your money mindset journey, where you're at now, and like what were some of the biggest turning points for you on that?
Yeah, so I've been working since I was 8. I started cleaning houses and taking care of babies. I had a full on nannying service by the time I was in high school, and I was booked like 3 months out. People couldn't even
Of
get me
course
on
you
their
were.
calendars. It was crazy.
Not at all
So
like
I,
you are now when we had to schedule this out 3
I,
months in
well,
advance.
exactly. Yeah, I like to
Some
keep
things never
everything nice
change.
and full. For sure. And so I've always worked a lot. I love to work. I love helping people. I love all of the things that go into making money, but I always really struggled to make ends meet. And I always had credit cards. And even though I always paid for all my own stuff, I, bought my own car, paid for my own cell phone when I was a teenager, put myself through college, took out student loans, paid for my apartment. My couch was on a credit card and my TV was on a credit card and my washer and dryer were on a credit card and I bought clothes on credit cards. And when I started dating my husband, it was so interesting. One morning I was, checking my emails and whatever. And I was like, oh man, my student loan is about to go up because I had signed up for this tiered system where it went up every 2 years. And I was 2 years into teaching and it was going up. And I was like, I don't have money for this. I better sell something, like sell
Mm,
books, or I used to sell my books or sell video games or sell clothes or whatever I had, if I needed it, or I'd work more. Right. And
yeah.
he was like, how much credit card debt do you have? And I was like, probably the average amount, like I've got student loans, I have a car, probably have 4 credit cards, nothing crazy. And he was like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
have any debt. Like he had a company car, his parents paid for college. He did not have a
Wow.
credit card, so he paid for stuff with the money he had. And I was like, what do you mean? Like I don't understand, because before my mom remarried the second time, we were homeless. Like my
Yeah.
childhood was very like you made money to spend money. And so that was before I had Ellie. Once I had Ellie, she's my 7-year-old, the catalyst for like my healing and everything. I started meeting other women who had this growth mindset. And the most impactful book I've ever read is called Creating Money. And I cannot remember the authors right now. If you want, I can grab it. It's probably on the other side of this laptop, but it's about how money is energy and we are magnets. And so if we can channel that energy, we become a magnet for what we desire and what we focus on. And after I read Money Magic, we built a custom pool that was $80,000. I bought a Tesla Model X. That was $100,000. We bought a motorhome. Ended up not liking the space, so we traded it in for a toy hauler, 47-foot toy hauler. My husband has read the book. He has since bought a Tesla. And so these like gigantic sums of money have come in. And even my business, like my business went from making $35,000-$40,000 a year to $100,000 a year. And I'm doing the same stuff I was doing before, but I'm doing
Mm,
more of what I love. And I'm
mm,
focusing more on my energy. I'm not chasing, I'm attracting. And, opportunities like this pop up. Hey, do you want to come on a podcast and talk about your story? Yes. Do you want to do this and
yeah,
share that? I'm like, yeah, of course I would. And I think some of it also includes some no's, right? Like deciding where not to spend your
sure.
energy. So that's what's changed for me.
So, what does that look like on a practical level for you?
Can you ask that a different
Yeah.
way?
Yeah, so, like, I guess what I'm looking for or what I'm wondering is, like, how do you, I don't know what that specific book says. I'm assuming it's similar to most money manifestation books, but, like, do you do a journaling practice that helps shift your energy? Do
Oh,
you do
okay.
anything specific?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, on a day-to-day, what's different now than what you were doing before you read that book?
Got it. Okay. Make it make sense. Yes.
Mm,
Well, okay. So Creating Money wasn't the first book I read. The first book I read that opened my eyes to growth mindset was You Are a Badass by Jen
mhm.
Sincero.
Actually, same.
I don't
That
know
was
if
the
you've
first
read.
one I read too.
Okay. Well, there
That was
is
the door
really
opener for me
just,
as well. Yeah.
yes, just like
Made it so
lighthearted and
accessible.
funny. Yes, super accessible. And every single chapter ends with being grateful and loving yourself, being grateful and loving yourself. And so I was like, okay, I get it. I get it. And then the second book I read was called Train Your Brain. And that book is by
Mm,
Dana Wild. Train Your Brain.
okay.
It's not very well known, but the people that
Mhm.
have read it are wildly grateful for the tools in there. Now that book is it's really geared towards direct sales, like it's how to have $1 million business. Um,
Mm,
I read You Are a Badass and then I read Train Your Brain. I got my business to $100,000 while I was reading Creating Money. So it's
mm,
those two books kind of overlapped each other. And if you want a logical, practical step one, step two, step three, Train Your Brain is absolutely the book to read because she has exercises in there. She has, journaling prompts and things that you can do to take steps forward in your business and remove the limiting beliefs and replace them with
mm,
exercises that work. Money Magic has visualizations, so it has meditations in there to practice, and there is a website that has them recorded and worksheets. They call them play sheets. So that book does
love that.
include some visualizations and exercises, but the in a nutshell, it's staying where you are energetically and being a magnet. So instead of
Mm,
chasing after the opportunities or, putting in so many extra hours or selling stuff to make money, it's really just focusing on what you want, having a symbol for it, meditating on it, or what they call visualizing, and letting it come to you. And it teaches you how to start small with small objects and then people, groups of people,
mm.
and you just once you experience success in that, then you try it with larger things, which is what I did. It would be I'd manifest a free coffee, or a friend would give me a book that I had been wanting, and they'd be like, "Hey, have you read this yet? You can have it." I'm like, "Whoa!" And then it was the larger things, the larger sums of money, and the car, and those things. So
That's amazing. Yeah, I don't know if you know much of like my story with this stuff, but I got like very, very into it like 5 or 6 years ago. Like especially as an entrepreneur, like it's very much growth mindset is like very important for that. I feel like, um, and then like I got into this interesting place where I kind of got burned by like the industry as a whole. I feel like I made some investments that were really expensive, didn't pay off like they were promised or like whatever, and like there's a bit there can be a bit of a gaslighting thing sometimes with like oh, it didn't work out, well you weren't XYZ enough,
right,
you weren't high vibe enough or whatever.
yeah,
So it took me like a long time, like I just sort of like it started to feel like it was all a sham, and like that became
Mm,
my story for a while. And I've been working through that now because like I also was like with a partner who I feel like did not help that narrative. Like they were super sus of everything and it made me super sus of everything. Changed the way I see the world a lot. So now I'm trying to like coming out of that trying to balance like what is my like honest feelings about this stuff? What can I take that resonates and what doesn't, and like who can I trust also, like in this kind of sphere and stuff. But I was just
absolutely.
wondering if you ever had any experiences with that sort of thing, or any thoughts on that, I guess?
Yeah, my journey has not all been awesome. It's not been all
Yeah.
rainbows and butterflies. My husband and I have separated twice through all of this, and I think
Mhm.
that's kind of what I mentioned earlier when I was like, you say yes to some things, but there's also stuff you have to start saying no to, and it's hard.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
some of that, it can be relationships, it could be environments, it can be
Mhm.
whole organizations that you have to decide like that doesn't serve
Work for
me and it
me.
doesn't
Yeah.
serve them either. Like me being a part of
Yeah.
it isn't working for them and it's not working for me. And you can always, pivot. I've done a lot of pivoting. But
Yeah.
there's been several relationships that I've grieved over the last 4 or 5 years since I've been on this journey. And there's also a good bit of questioning, kind of how you mentioned. It's like, well, what do I believe about that? Like, is that my belief, or am I taking on
Mhm.
somebody else's belief and trying to make a
Mhm.
square fit in a circle? And just really leaning into authenticity and
Mhm.
self discovery versus how do I make myself acceptable for everybody else. And I
Yeah.
saw a TikTok the other day that said, people pleasing is manipulation. And I was like, oh man, that's so
Damn.
on point because there's
Yeah,
some
that's good.
people out there that'll like say the right things and do the right things and blah, blah, blah. But they're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it to
Yeah.
receive acceptance. So they're pleasing others to get what they want, which is that
Which is
manipulation piece. But
yeah. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
So
that's a
I've
good one.
I've come up I've come up against some roadblocks and it's uncomfortable and then ultimately it ends up being the pivot that I needed. So I
Mhm.
just have to trust that nothing that is meant for me can pass me by. It's one of my favorite
Yeah.
mantras.
Yeah, absolutely. I do feel like it's one of those things where like the people who hold that mindset, right? Nothing that's not meant for me is gonna, disrupt me or anything like that. Or not disrupt, but like
Mhm.
come at me. I don't know. I'm not very good with words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like people who hold that belief though, like I don't know, like I still don't know how it works, but like I feel like it really is like amazing how like the beliefs you hold like create the world that you're in. I mean, like you can look at
Totally.
anything from a million different perspectives. It's really like I feel like a lot about shifting your perspective and like being willing to see
Yeah.
things from another way. Um yeah, and I feel like also sometimes the scariest part is all the things that you have to let go of or move on from, or
Mhm.
when you're being radically honest with yourself, have to admit like this doesn't work for me anymore. How do you balance
Yeah.
like that with practicals like let's say money? So for me, I'm in a job right now that is starting to be soul sucking, and I
Yeah.
really want to like go back to doing my own thing. But when I was doing
Mhm.
my own thing, that's like how I got into financial trouble because I wasn't making enough money. I don't really have an income from it. And I was hiring coaches and investing way earlier than I should have, but then like I feel like such a strong pull, and I really feel like the more you listen to that pull and like that authentic self and like follow that stuff you were made for, like I really do feel like
Mhm.
that's where the abundance is. But like I also made a promise to myself to not like put myself in a bad financial position again. Do you have any thoughts
Yeah.
on like kind of balancing those two things?
Yeah, so I've done that. I've been in bad financial positions because of, there I got some beautiful advice from one of my favorite coaches. Her name is Danielle Bryan, and she said,
Mm,
"Work with coaches who teach you that you are your
are the
best
answer.
coach. Like you're
Yeah,
your best healer,
agreed.
you're your best coach." And so I'm very fortunate that I've come into contact with people that are not like, you need to spend this much on this much of a program to get to where you want to go.
Mhm.
Like, no, there's books, there's
Yeah.
podcasts, there's videos, there's and honestly, all the answers you know already. You just need help
Mm.
remembering and getting
Mm-hmm.
clarity. But yeah, I've worked with probably half a dozen coaches. I've probably spent close to 50 grand on coaches and
Yep.
programs and things like that. And the last coach I had, I fired. I had paid for the whole 6 months up front. I think I paid $5,000, and she was helping me. Uh, she was encouraging me to grow the energy side of my business because I have my practical, logical skincare business. Sell this, get
Mm.
this much commission. But I love astrology and I love human design
Mm.
and I love working with energy. And I came to her and I was like, I did it. I've got a price. I've got a program. I know what I'm going to call it. This is what it is. And she got jealous and she said, you can't charge that much. You're not qualified. And I was like, wait
Oh
a
my gosh.
second. Weren't you the
Whoa.
one because I was going to charge more than she thought I was worth or whatever. So that's the
Yeah.
last coach I worked with. And I had this clarity of like, I'm not working with her anymore. And it was so uncomfortable. And it was,
Mm.
it caused a lot of issues because she was a Labri customer of mine, which is the skincare I sell. She was in a lot of the same groups that I was. Like, we had started to form a really integrated
Mm-hmm.
relationship where stopping that relationship affected other
Yeah.
relationships. And so I've kind of, that's been on my radar the last 2 years. I'm like, okay, so this relationship isn't just me to them. It's me to them and me to them to that person and that person to this person back. It's very,
True.
it's like web. It's like
Interconnected.
a web.
Yeah.
Yes. Interconnected. So as far as like what have I invested in the last since that coach, I have not hired another coach, and that was early 2021. So it's been a good 2.5 years, and I have been really intentional about learning how to trust myself. And
Mm-hmm.
there's um, there's another book. There's a theme here. I'm
Yes.
recommending all these books.
Yeah.
It's called The Artist's Way. Have you heard of that one?
Yep, I have read that one. I love that one.
Okay,
I
so
don't think
The
I've ever
Artist
finished it though. It's long. It's just got a
it's
lot of
It's very
exercises in there.
long. Yes, it's 12 weeks and it is challenging. Like, I'm a very
Yeah.
dedicated, resilient, persistent person. And one of the challenges is to journal every single day, but it's 3 pages. It's like 30 minutes of
Yeah.
just journaling. And as a mom with very small children, I mean, Ellie was 5 and Xander was 1, not even 2 yet when I started that practice. And I was separated from my husband when I started that practice. So it was like,
Mm.
okay, solo parenting.
Yeah.
I almost made it to the end with the journaling, but what that book, the reason I brought it up is because it taught me about the self trust and the self discovery versus, having other people be my source of knowledge
Totally.
or validation. Um, and there's another. I don't think he calls himself a coach. His name's Gladius. He has something called the
Love
Sovereign
him.
Mind Method. Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
you should get him on
He's
this
done it on
podcast.
me. He's done it on me. I
Oh,
should have
me
him. Yeah,
too.
yeah. That'd be a great
And
great person.
we traded. I did a human design astrology reading for him. I call them I am remembering
Nice.
sessions, and he did a sovereign mind session for me. And I was like, wow, it's that easy. It's that
Yeah.
simple. So I think throughout the years, self love, self discovery, simplifying, clarity, those are all things that I've leaned into because I have done
Yeah.
the investment side. Like, I did not make money on my retreat back in 2019. I did not make money on my
Yeah.
vendor business that I think I lost a good $13,000 with the last
Yep.
event that I did. But it's like, and I've spent the money on the coaches and not, the one I
Yeah,
had to
seen the
fire. It's
return.
like, okay,
Yeah.
right,
Mhm.
you don't see the return. So, really investing in yourself, you will
Yeah.
never regret that. Investing in equipment or investing in programs or investing in
Sure.
coaches, you might end up regretting it if you do it from a place of like, I'm not enough
Fix
or
me.
I
Yeah.
can't, yes, a fix me
Yes.
mentality.
Yeah.
Um,
I definitely like one big takeaway from my entrepreneur experience was a lot of it was me throwing money at just the pain of growing a business. Like the pain of growing a
yeah,
business is just that it takes time. Like, or maybe not if you can also like challenge that belief and like, maybe for some people it doesn't, but it's consistency and it's like coming back to it and keeping your energy right and all those things. And it just
yeah,
takes a minute sometimes, it's not an immediate thing. And I think I was throwing money at that problem, like just show me
yeah,
how to get me leads, like whatever.
yeah.
So yeah, no, I think that's a super valuable like takeaway and something I've come to as well a lot in the last few years is like the best coaches will point you back towards yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, the Train Your Brain book, I have to give a lot of credit to that because I did grow my business very fast. I went from our team volume went from 230,000 and like 100 people on the team to over a million, over
Wow.
800 people on the team. Like it exploded after I
That's
read
cool.
Train Your Brain because
Okay.
it teaches you how to not just get rid of your limiting beliefs, but how to replace them. So you could
Mm,
say something like, my business is taking time to grow, but I'm calling new people every day. And like using the word but negates what you said
mm-hmm.
before. So you can still have the disempowering thought or belief. Like it's not about pretending things are high vibe and positive all the time because
Right.
toxic positivity is like uh,
It's also the
I
worst.
hate that.
Yeah.
It's the worst, but it teaches you how to have them side by side and have that
Mm,
practical piece, but then also trusting. It's
yeah.
big on the emotional scale. So yeah, I'm frustrated right now, but I'm hopeful that after I eat and have a nap, I'm going to feel better. And then I
Yeah.
believe that if I call 7 people, 3 of them will answer and one of them will be ready to buy today. And I
Mm-hmm.
trust that. And you move up this frustration, hope, belief, trust, knowing. And the
Mm,
knowing is joy and gratitude. And I've taught my team and I continue to practice that scale myself. And I think that's how my business stays growing all these years. Because a lot of people, they had crazy success in 2020, which is what
mm,
happened with us. But we continue to have success because I try to teach these methods as often as I can. And I teach it to my kids too.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And did the Train Your Brain book, is that one more energetics or is it more like they teaching you stuff like cold calls or like strategies and stuff like that you're doing? Or is it more about energy as well or mix of both?
It's it's all about training your brain. So your thoughts create how you feel, and how you feel creates your reality.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wake up and stub your toe and you think, I'm so stupid, I should have moved that yesterday, and then you walk to the bathroom and you're like, I left my toothbrush in the other room, and you're frustrated and you're having all these thoughts of like, I'm dumb, or I'm stupid, or that's dumb, or this isn't going my
Mm-hmm.
way, and then you drive to work and you're angry at everybody else, versus you wake up, you stub your toe, and you're like, oh, I should probably slow down a little bit. Okay, 5 more minutes. And then you're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for 5 more minutes. And then you realize you don't have your toothbrush and you're like, oh, that's all right. Need to get my steps in anyway. And it's this
Mm,
mindset shift of my environment's out to get me, people are out to get me, everything's
mm-hmm.
against me. And it's this switch to I'm in control. I choose how I feel with the thoughts I choose to think. And
Mm-hmm.
so it is very practical in that it gives you the words to use, it gives you the
Mm-hmm.
exercises to use,
Nice.
and then you do all those businessy things like call this many
Gotcha.
people or book this many
Mm,
events, or you know talk to this, go to these networking events. You do all that from a place of joy and knowing and gratitude.
gotcha.
And I had read that book when I started. um, I let go of my vendor love business, which is the business that I had the retreat with.
Mm-hmm.
That book really showed me like if I really want to grow my Labri skincare business because I can do it from home. I can do it with my babies. I don't have
Yeah.
to invest anything. I don't have to invest anything but energy
Yeah.
into it. Then I have to let other things go that are not serving my family anymore.
Yeah. Totally. And the stuff that you did, like cold calls and stuff like that, like, are those things that you then at that point felt like you wanted to do, or were those things that you had to move to a place of wanting to do, like you didn't want to do before?
Yeah, I'm actually super against cold calls, but what I do love is connections.
Mm,
So just reaching out, and this goes back to that creating money, that magnet book is you reach
mm,
out to somebody and you provide value or you express gratitude. And if it's meant to be, something will come out of that, an opportunity or an ask will come through from their end. And I've learned a lot about human design. I'm a generator. Do you know much about human
hmm.
design?
Yeah, that was where I was going to go next. Yeah, I'm a man gen.
Yeah. Okay. So do you know if you're a sacral or
Sacral
emotional
authority.
or okay? Okay. So we're the same in that we have this yes or no response to things. So if I
Hmm.
show up to an opportunity and somebody asks me a question, I know right away whether it's a yes or a no.
Yeah.
Um, if it's worded a certain way. So with business and cold calling, I very rarely actually I can't even remember the last time that I reached out to somebody and was like, "Hi, you don't know me." You know, the "Hey girl"
Yeah,
messages like,
yeah,
"Hey, want to try my product that you've never heard of?" No, no, no. It's, "Hi, I'm
yeah.
Melissa. What's your name? What do you do? What do you like?" And I've learned to ask a lot of questions.
Mm,
Um, and I've learned that I'm not a salesman, I'm a consultant. So I'm not
mm,
selling you anything, I'm providing a solution, and then you can choose if you want to take it or not. Whereas I think some people in the sales world, they kind of bulldoze or steam over those relationships
yeah,
and then they don't have any return
totally.
loyalty or return orders. So with my business, I've been working with some of the same people since I started 7 years ago.
Hmm.
And now they have their own business because I've taught them how to do what I'm doing. And they're like, okay,
Hmm.
this is working for you. It's working for me. And it's duplicating, because it's rooted in connection, gratitude, and curiosity. It's not
Hmm.
rooted in sales and power and recognition.
Totally. Yeah.
It's,
Well, and I can see where it'd be easier to like energetically get behind just connecting with people than it is
yeah.
like I've always just hated when the advice was like do 100 cold calls every day for
Uh-uh.
like forever. I'm like, no, you
No,
can't make me.
but a hundred gratitude messages, even if
Totally.
nothing comes out of it, if you pick up your phone and you're like, Savannah, I'm grateful for you. Melissa, I thought about you. I'm grateful for you. And you just send 50 of those out into the world.
Right.
You're adding positivity and love
Totally.
back into the world, and a sale might come from it now or later. I call it planting seeds with my team, and I
Mm,
tell them, you can plant 7 different kinds of fruits and vegetables and herbs, but none of them are going to sprout at the same time. None of them need the same amount of nutrients. And some
hmm.
of them can weather no rain, and some of them will not survive. So you really
Hmm.
have to treat everything from a place of like, I planted the seeds. Now I'm going
Mm,
to nurture the relationship, but I'm not going to control it and make it work for me. Like, I want each one to
totally.
be individual and work for them. And when it does bloom, it's fantastic and everybody celebrates. It's not just a, oh, I won and I got something from them mentality.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah, I want to hear more too about your journey with human design and astrology, and tell me what kind of sparked that, and about some of the offerings that you do now with that.
Oh gosh, so I've always loved astrology. And even though I was raised Catholic, uh, and most of my family is still very Christian, my grandma always talked about astrology. She would say, like,
Hmm.
oh, the moon's in Leo today, or whatever. She would
Yeah.
read horoscopes and stuff. And so I've always been kind of, anytime it would come up, I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. Ooh, that's interesting. And as one of my special interests, I've just devoured any kind of information I can get from it. And back in 2018, during my vendor love business days, I met an astrologer, um, and she did a reading for me. And I was like, this is so validating. Like, you got that
Yeah.
based off math. Like, you got that based off of science. You got that. Like, that's my blueprint. You did that. And she's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all right here. And so I started learning my own natal chart, and just through asking her questions and learning about my own chart, I'm like, oh, there's patterns. I love, love, love
Mm.
patterns. I love puzzles. And back to Danielle Bryan, that one of my coaches that I admire, I did a program with her called Blueprint, and it
Mm.
had astrology, human design,
Ugh,
cranial
love it.
sacral therapy, gene keys. Like, it had all
Mm.
these different modalities. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're all different languages saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I got so excited about it. And I had a human design reading done, and I was just fascinated by the gates. And then I had a gene key reading done, and I was like, oh my gosh, I already know this because I've had these other readings done. How cool is that, that it's confirmed
Yeah.
over and over and
Right.
over again? So back to that coach that I fired, she also read human design, and I was like, I can do that and read astrology charts and read gene keys. Like, all of it is fascinating to me. And it just, I don't know, it clicked in a way that just felt really natural for me. So in 2021, I started offering I am remembering sessions where people can ask a few questions, and I pull up all three charts, sometimes two charts. The gene keys ends up being super repetitive of human design, and gene keys is more contemplative, where
Mm.
one gene key is 6 or 7 pages of information, and you have dozens of these channels. So it's nothing that you can cover in an hour, but open up gene keys and read about one of your channels on a Sunday morning, and you're going to learn more about yourself than most people will ever learn,
Yeah.
from that one gene key. But anyway, I started offering these readings, where I pull up the two charts side by side, and I help them remember who they are at a blueprint level, at a soul level, and kind of get past whatever stuckness or frustration that they're feeling. Because I don't know, humaning can be kind of hard sometimes. Being a human
Totally.
has a lot going
Whose
on.
idea was
So,
this?
whose idea? Why did we decide to do this? So, the people I've worked with, they've done everything from tripling their income to rebuilding partnerships to becoming more fulfilled parents. Because I do composite readings too, where I put a mom and her
Mm.
son,
Oh,
or a
that's so cool.
partners side by side, and I say, okay, these are your gifts, these are your challenges. Now that you're aware of them, you
Mm-hmm.
can work with them, because awareness is the missing piece. Anybody that's stuck, they're missing awareness. Anybody that's broke
Mm.
or sad or sick, or awareness is what they're missing. And that's what all those books gave me. you know you Are a Badass and Train Your Brain and Creating Money in Artist Way. They didn't give me the answers, they gave me awareness, so then I could then
Mm.
apply that to what I needed.
Mm. Beautiful. Well said.
Oh,
The gene
thanks.
keys, I've never, I mean, I don't know much about. I've heard of it. I don't know much about it. You also mentioned something on your social recently that was like a healing session for your daughter, like she was sick or something. Was that
Oh
gene
yeah,
keys or that was
motion
something
code.
else?
That's a
Emotion code.
motion
What was that
code.
about?
Yeah. And that's the name of the book. There's a motion code, body code, and that's about muscle testing. Have you heard of muscle
Okay.
testing?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Got it.
So muscle testing is basically asking a question, and then your body responds to the question. So we have more connections in our heart than we do our brain. So your body will respond to something before your brain does, and more accurately. So a lot of times we'll be, I'm trying to think of a certain situation, but for example, my naturopath, he does muscle testing. So when we're sick, we go to the naturopath and he muscle tests our organs to see where our body needs help versus asking us to describe our symptoms, because our brain
Mm,
is only going to be able to explain so much, and words can be tricky, and the body's going to speak for itself. So in emotion code, you could be dealing with a physical pain or a physical ailment. It could also be emotional. Our body stores emotion physically if we don't release it. And so I've had toothaches go away with emotion code. My children have
mm,
had ear infections and pink eye and coughs and sore throats that have gone away with emotion code sessions. And um, I don't know how to do emotion code myself yet. So I have a friend of mine that I hire, and she does the sessions for us, and highly recommend.
that's
I will
cool.
connect y'all if you want to.
Yeah, please do. What's your understanding of like your best guess of what's happening there? Like, what do you suspect?
Yeah, my understanding of it is it works like Reiki, so it works like energy healing. The body is energy, everything around us is energy, and so what it does is it releases trapped emotions from the body, so that the
Mm,
body is not experiencing that emotion trapped in there anymore. Um, and it doesn't just release it from you, it releases it from all timelines. So it
mm,
goes into the past and it goes into the future, so that you're not generational pain passing it on. I don't know if you're familiar with generational curses and generational
mm-hmm,
trauma, but something that
mm-hmm,
happens to your mom or your grandma can be passed down to you as a physical ailment. Um, and I've heard of stories, personal friends telling me their stories of how their daughter had PCOS and she did so many emotion code sessions with it, and now she doesn't have PCOS anymore. And her
wow,
mom had experienced trauma in her life, and it had passed down to her daughter emotionally,
wow.
but it manifests physically. So yeah, Reiki, energy healing is the closest I know, and muscle testing are the
And
easiest ways to
are you a
explain
Reiki
it.
practitioner? I can't remember.
I'm not.
No.
No,
Okay.
I work with some.
Sure.
Another practice that I love is cranial sacral therapy,
Oh yeah, tell me about that.
and
That I
yeah,
haven't heard of.
cranial sacral is similar to energy healing and Reiki, but it restores the natural energy flows in your body. So sometimes it deals with chakras, sometimes it deals with organs, but it restores everything back to balance.
Got it. Okay, cool. And so you're trained in which ones again? You've got the astrology, human design.
I do I do astrology, human design. I can read gene keys. I'm not an expert by any means. I do a little bit of tarot and oracle card reading, but those are mostly just like that's for fun, and you know,
Yeah,
uh, don't really broadcast that too much. It's also
sure.
a lot of these modalities I've learned for myself, and then other people are like, "Hey, how
Mhm.
is that going so well for you?" And I'm like, "Well, I do this." They're like, "Okay, can you do that for me?" And it's like, "Yes, I can." And you're your best healer, like you're your best
Mm,
coach. So like I can help with this. This is my price and this is what I do. And at the end of the day, you know, you can only rely on me for so much.
totally. Totally. What's been the most like profound reading or session you've done like without sharing intimate details of anyone's, but has there been
That's a
anything
good
kind of mind-blowing
question.
for you?
So what's funny about that, so all my readings I do without the person present. I record them on my computer and I send it to them in a private YouTube video. And I do that because in the sessions I end up channeling, and
Mm.
I don't always remember what I've said. So
Mm,
afterwards, they're like, "Oh, well, you said this, this, and this. Can you tell me more about that?" And I was like, let me go back and listen to the recording, because sometimes
I don't remember. Yeah.
I say things that are I've channeled, and they didn't come from me. They came from energy or source,
Mhm.
whatever you choose to believe. But there's been There was one reading that I did for a friend, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, where she restored her relationship. Like
Mm.
she went from being single to in a relationship with this person to almost leaving to then now they're engaged and
Wow.
they're moving forward with that. And it's just like, their understanding of themselves. I didn't do that. I just brought some awareness to the table, and I was like, here you go, here's some
Sure.
awareness, and they did what they wanted
Mm-hmm.
with it. um, but there's sometimes I've also done some oracle readings. They're really fun, where I do their self-care oracle, and I do one theme for the month, for the year. They're like, I do them after Christmas, before the new year, for the year ahead. And I've had people come back to me and they're like, Melissa, I went to blah, blah, blah. And then I remembered and listened to my recording, and it was the same exact thing. And I'm like, well, that's fun.
Wow, that's cool.
So there's just a lot of synchronicity and
Yeah.
clarification in them.
Yeah, that's really cool. How would you recommend like getting started with the kind of more psychic side of things? Would you call it psychic? It's not exactly psychic. Energy, I guess. Energetics.
Yeah, I have a hard time with the word psychic, only
Mm,
because it could be interpreted so many different ways.
sure.
And then people start getting into
Intuitive.
like, yeah, I think the easiest way to tap into your own intuition is to clear out what's blocking you. And
Mm,
I know we haven't talked too much yet about like my sobriety and
mm,
lifestyle changes, but there's a lot that blocks us from ourselves,
mm.
and they are almost glorified in today's
Yeah.
society. Like not getting 8 hours of sleep, all right, you're already malfunctioning.
Mm-hmm.
Drinking or smoking or any kind of drugs on a
Yep.
daily or habitual basis. A lot of people don't know this about drinking. If you're a habitual drinker, so you drink once a day, or you drink every
Yep.
Friday when it's happy hour, or you drink on a regular basis, even if it's one drink, and I'm
Yeah.
talking about alcohol here, your body produces cortisol when you don't drink. So your
Mm,
body has a stress response to not having
yep.
alcohol if you're a habitual drinker, and you might know that already, but it's
Mm,
I feel like my intuition has become not stronger but clearer, and the channeling is effortless, and it's more about that self-trust and self-discovery than it is like psychic or um being a reader is really just having clear, clean energy fields.
mm,
And it goes
mm-hmm.
back to that magnetic energy, where it's like, I'm not chasing anything, I'm attracting, I'm a magnet here, and whatever's meant for me will come to me, and whatever's not meant for me will pass me. I don't have to. You know what a big piece of it I think is fear, letting go of fear and leaning more into trust, because I
Mm.
think fear holds us back a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, I mean, sobriety is like something I can't commend people on enough because I've done it for stints of time. Not
Yeah.
sober now. So I know like what a challenge it can be to like get to the other side of that, to maintain it. Like it's not easy.
Hmm.
But yeah, I
Well, and
agree that like go ahead.
I was just going to say that what I've learned about addiction, because falling back on gene keys, there's shadows and gifts and divine gifts and gene keys.
Mm,
And two of my shadows, I have addiction twice in my gene key map.
wow.
And I'm like, oh,
Oh
fun,
cool.
interesting. And what I've learned about addiction in the human experience, like there's addiction on the energetic level, and then there's addiction in this human practical life level.
Mm,
And it's really um, this loop of dopamine and serotonin. And
yeah.
so when your body doesn't have any, you're on this down sweep, your body's going, what can I do? What can I have? What can I
Yep.
consume? What can I consume to get back up on this side? And then naturally it's going to fall back down. And then you're
Yep.
again, your human experience is like, what can I have? What can I do? And what I've learned about my body is that once I notice I'm on the downslope, I just notice it and I'm like, okay, I'm on the downslope. I'm
Mm,
really craving this, or this. And I can choose to sit with it down here,
mm,
or I can choose to fix it and get back on the cycle. And it's
mm,
this repetitive cycle of highs and lows and somewhere in between. And so I've tried to build my lifestyle around because coping mechanisms are not morally good or bad. Coping mechanisms are morally neutral. If you eat when you're stressed, or you drink when you're anxious, or you smoke when you're whatever, it doesn't make you a good or a bad person, or a good or a bad choice. You're just
mm-hmm.
coping. You're just learning how
Yeah.
to help your body in the best way that you can. And so I've learned a lot of coping mechanisms that keep me up on this top path more often. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and funny enough, they do cost more money, but I'm not
Mm,
spending money on alcohol and cigarettes. And I just celebrated 7 years of no cigarettes, and that was the hardest one
that's
for me to
awesome.
quit. Thank you. And I've learned how to, you know, when I'm feeling this low energy, getting up and going for a walk feels like the hardest thing to do, but I know I'm going to feel better afterwards. Or turning my
Mm-hmm.
screen off and going to bed is going to
Yeah.
help versus having a glass of wine. And I've incorporated lots of holistic practices like the emotion code and the cranial sacral, and I'm a huge advocate for chiropractic care, not just when you're
Mm,
hurt, but weekly chiropractic care.
yeah.
Just get your
Interesting.
spine in order, because your spine is connected to everything. Your hormones, which is
Mm,
they're the messengers of the body, your all the hormones from, a lot of people think, oh, estrogen, testosterone, those are hormones. No, dopamine's a hormone, serotonin's a hormone, oxytocin's a hormone. And there's a lot of ways that you can get those hormones back online and back on that upswing
mm,
without consuming things that you don't want to. You know they're not good for
totally.
you. They know they keep you on the cycle, but sometimes we
Yep.
need that awareness. And it's like,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm feeling unaligned. Maybe I need an emotion code session.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need a chiropractic session. Maybe I just need to feed my body minerals and vitamins that it's missing. I can't tell you how many times that I'm like, everyone hates me. The world is ending. And I'm like, oh, wait, I don't think I've eaten today.
Yeah.
So,
It's like start with the basics too. It's like crazy how much just
start
like
with the basics.
hydration and eating
Yes.
well can like make such a big difference.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
like definitely been my experience with drugs and alcohol. Like I said, I'm like off the wagon right now, and it's like so clear to me that like sobriety's like on my path. Like I know where I'm headed and it is sobriety.
Yeah.
It's interesting how much I still fight that, or like I guess I'm like not I don't really feel like I'm in like a battle with it as much as I'm like I'm letting it take the course it needs to take a little bit. I'm being
Hmm.
very like patient with that, but I do feel like it's been calling to me again. This is kind of what it does. Like it like will start calling to me again, and then I'll engage with it. Like, um, and then I guess I've hit certain walls in sobriety that have like had me go back. Um,
Yeah.
but I think it is. Yeah, I mean everything you said is like so true. Like it really is about learning to sit with it more, or like yeah, these finding coping mechanisms that like take you off the hamster wheel instead of like getting back on again. It's like let's just step off this
Yeah.
cycle. So yeah, I think that's really powerful, everything you just shared, and I'll definitely be thinking about some of those tools and stuff as I consider whatever's next with me and drugs and alcohol.
It's yeah. And part of it I had this I think sometimes people have to hit rock bottom before they're like, okay, I'm
Mhm.
not doing that anymore. Um and I've had a couple, not rock bottom, but in that particular arena. So when I was teaching, I smoke every day, drank every day. Everything I ate was processed food. Like I didn't even, everything came out of a freezer meal or a drive through line. And I went from that to now I'm like paleo, drug free, alcohol free. I don't take any medications. I don't even take Zyrtec and I live in Texas. Like, um, I went on this radical change because what I was doing before, it doesn't work for me anymore. It doesn't work for who I want to be and how I want to show up. And I think people keep their coping mechanisms as long as it's working for them. And that's the
Mhm.
same. I've noticed this with people's behavior, not just their coping mechanisms, but their behavior overall. Like I have a family
Yeah.
member that I don't talk to anymore. But I have other family members that talk to her and they complain about the way that she treats people. And I'm like, it works for her. Like
Mhm.
you keep showing up and you keep engaging with her and how she
Mhm.
behaves works for her. So as long as drugs and alcohol are working for people or even food,
Mhm.
like I probably would have kept eating fast food if it continued to work for me, but it
Right.
didn't. I got an autoimmune diagnosis. I got pregnant, so the drugs and alcohol weren't going to work anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and I stopped putting myself in high stress environments. I don't work
Mhm.
for anybody but myself. I don't go anywhere I don't want to go. And so I'm no longer having to cope. I mean, I even separated from my
Mm.
husband. Like
Yeah. No,
I
totally.
I I eliminated all the stressors in my life and
Mhm.
I created these boundaries that are just non-negotiable
Yeah.
um, for me. And so sometimes it just takes to getting to that place where you're like, this is not working for me anymore. This is my new non-negotiable. And sometimes
Mhm.
it bends a little bit. Like I did no sugar, no flour, vegan for 9 months, and I stuck with it. Like I said, I'm a very resilient, persistent person, and at that 9 month mark, it didn't work for me anymore. I
Yeah,
wasn't feeling
totally.
good. I missed going to birthday parties and eating out with friends. And
Yeah.
um, so
I hit
it,
that
it's
wall with
all it's all an
vegetarian
evolving
too.
journey, and it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
perfect.
Totally.
Did
I had that
you?
experience with
Yeah.
vegetarianism. Like it worked for me for a long time and then I my priority shifted. I wanted to be stronger at the gym. I needed more protein and I was
Yep.
like this is a good way to get it. And then I was actually like, wow, I feel a lot better having just like not a ton of meat. I don't eat beef. I don't fuck with that shit, but but like pork
Yeah.
and chicken and turkey and stuff. And it's like made me feel so much stronger and just like feels good for me right now. So that was a big interesting learning shift for
Yeah.
me of like, oh, like there isn't a best way. It's just like what's working for you right now.
Yeah. And protein is such an interesting argument when it comes to like vegetarian versus eating animal based protein. Most of it is amino acids. It's very,
Mm,
very difficult to get complete amino acids from
yes.
fruits and vegetables. You have to get them from grains and legumes, which a lot of people don't
Mm-hmm.
eat because they take a long time to cook and prepare.
Yeah.
And so they end up eating processed versions of
Yep.
grains and legumes, and then they're getting all this glyphosate and herbicides.
Yeah.
And so it's I
Totally.
another one of my special interests is food, like real
Mm,
food versus
yeah.
synthetic food, and how our
Totally.
body
Did you
actually
watch
processes.
Poisoned on Netflix? Did you watch Poisoned on
No,
Netflix yet?
is that a new one?
Yeah, so it's about mostly like E. coli and
Okay.
like a couple of like outbreaks and stuff that we've had on food poisoning kind of and ugh,
Yeah.
it just was not I like hate the way our food is handled in this country and like I would love to get to where I can like raise my own chickens and eggs, get eggs off the farm and grow my own vegetables and
Yeah.
stuff. That's definitely where I want to get to.
Yeah.
Or even farmers markets, I think are such a good resource as well when you live in a city.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what we're building towards right now. One of the reasons we got the RV is like, let's get some land, let's have that much
yeah.
more freedom. I've already left so many other systems, like my kids are not in the school
Mm-hmm.
system, I'm not in the
Yep.
workforce system. Um, Having our own land and having more say about our food is definitely a
Absolutely.
priority.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I found oh, the other thing I was going to say about being vegetarian, I definitely think you can get like there are ways to get that stuff, but you're right. Like I feel like most people don't do it. I was certainly not a very good vegetarian, I don't think. Like I definitely would like get the frozen aisle, veggie patties and stuff. So I do think
Yep.
if you do vegetarian right, you can probably get what you need. I'm definitely not a like
Yeah.
anti-vegetarian, but I was a bread and
Yeah.
cheese-atarian.
Right, right,
So that
right.
doesn't help anyone.
Well, and the funny thing about my journey is I was whole food vegan. So I was eating rice,
Mm,
quinoa, black beans, chickpeas. Like I wasn't eating anything in a processed version. I was eating measured portions of grains, legumes, cooked vegetables, raw vegetables, nuts and seeds. Like I was getting all the food groups every day. And I got down to like 127, I think was the lowest I got, 127
mm,
pounds, and I'm 150 right now. I'm 25 pounds heavier and I
wow.
feel good. And
Yeah.
I was like, man, this is not working for me anymore. So I went on
Mm-hmm.
this radical, I was like, I'm just going to eat whatever I want. So I was eating anything and everything. And then I felt really sick. So I reached out to, I forget what the letters behind her name are, if she's a naturopath or a holistic doctor, I can't remember, but I've done 4 tests with her now. One of them was a
Wow.
food test, and I learned that I am intolerant to grains, rice, quinoa, oats. I was eating oats
Oh
for
no, all the
breakfast.
things you were eating. Oh.
I was eating like I would say a good 60% of my diet was grains, and I learned that I can't have those now. So that was
Yeah.
a big shift for me going from vegan to paleo. I was like, well, if I can't have grains and dairy, that's paleo.
Yeah.
um, I'm not super strict. I'll have regular sugar. Paleo's really big on only having coconut sugar, and I do try to do that as much as possible just because sugar is a drug in itself. But I feel much more balanced. I'd heard about leaky gut. I had no idea there was
Mm.
leaky gut, leaky cells, and leaky brain. Like my body was
Wow.
just not holding on to, I was malnourished even though I was eating. I wasn't
Yeah.
anorexic, but my body wasn't using any of the food that I was
Mm.
intaking. And I was
Yeah.
having autoimmune responses, rashes and hives and those kinds of
Mm.
things, which is what got me started on my skincare journey. And lo and
Mm.
behold, I've just been eating incorrectly for my
Right.
machine all these years. So
Yeah.
it's a little fresh for me. In October, it'll be 1 year that I've been
Okay.
aware of my no
Cool.
grains, no dairy situation.
Nice. That's awesome. You also talk about like the fact that you're very persistent and resilient, and I'm wondering if you've always been that way. Is that in your design at all? And if it was a skill, how did you build that?
Yeah, it's definitely a part of my design. I've always been that way. I'm also autistic, so I
Mm.
hyper focus on things. I've been a very avid reader since I was 3. And, I was always in the gifted and talented classes. I graduated high school early. Like, I've always been on this. Like, people have always told me, like, she's gifted, she's highly intelligent. And I'm like, oh, all these years I'm autistic. Like, I carry these noise canceling headphones with me everywhere. I have a hard time
Mm-hmm.
with bright lights. Like, me working for myself and removing myself from high stress situations has helped
Mm-hmm.
my sensory needs so much. So this
Mm.
persistence is almost like I either want it or I don't. Like there's no
Mm.
gray, there's no in between for me. It's like I either want it or I don't. I either am going for it or I'm not. There's no like halfway for me.
Mm.
Um, which shows up in a lot of my relationships too. And I've always had a really
Mm.
challenging time holding relationships long term because I don't always understand that there is that middle ground for
Middle
some
area.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
all or nothing. I'm either the most loyal
Yeah, we're
best friend
either
you'll ever have,
disconnected
or
and
I don't
not.
know
Yeah.
you anymore.
Yeah. Totally. I think I'm a bit that way
um,
as well. I've realized in recent years, I'm a bit of a flip flopper with my, like, yeah, what I'm focused on. But I think I'm more ADHD than autistic. I've been tested for ADHD. I've not been tested for autism, but um,
there's a
I
really
like get
cool
hyper
online
focused, but
test.
in shorter. Oh, is there?
Yeah. Hmm.
I get hyper focused, but I feel like it's not as long term. Maybe like autism, it feels a little like hyper focus over longer periods of time, and ADHD feels like hyper focus for 2 hours, and then I'm not touching it again for 3 weeks. So like my
Yeah.
struggle is consistency. Like, oh my god, it's so hard for me to stick with literally anything, and that's also a belief I need to work on. But also, it's a diagnosis, so I have a hard time balancing that.
Yeah, I'm self-diagnosed autistic with there's online tests you can take and they're really like it's a spectrum, right? So if you're above I think it's above 60 or 70, then you're highly likely to be autistic. I'm like 170. I'm like way at the other side
Way
of the
out there.
spectrum. And
Nice.
my husband's been he was diagnosed ADHD as a child and medicated, and that had a whole slew of issues long term
Mm,
and short term. But he has taken the test also, and so he now is like, okay, I'm autistic too. So we describe ourselves as a neurodivergent family. So the
yeah.
unschooling really works
Yeah.
for us. Like
Makes sense.
I
Yep.
I have watched so and neurodivergence is just it's more common than most people think, and it's a
I think
lot
so
of
too.
it can
Yeah.
be we're coping with things like drugs and alcohol, nicotine and caffeine and sugar
Yep.
because we do have a very rapid use of serotonin,
Mhm.
and I have tests to
Exactly.
prove it. I've done cheek swab tests, I've done urine tests, I've done
Mhm.
neurotransmitter tests. I burn through my serotonin so
Same.
quickly. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm starting to learn like I can get serotonin from taking my bra off and putting on a soft shirt. Like that will
Mhm.
solve 90% of how I'm feeling,
Mm.
or um, putting on music that I love, or drinking a sparkly beverage. Sparkling water is my best friend for like
Yeah.
regulating. And so the hyper focus or like changing what you're doing frequently, it could just be that that activity is not scratching that itch anymore. Like it's not, that activity is no longer interesting to you or
Mhm.
desirable. And
Mhm.
I think it's okay to change
Yeah.
what you're
What I'm
doing.
trying to
And
do now, yeah, is like let myself like follow that natural like cuz what I'm getting from this whole conversation too, like to summarize is like the more you know about yourself, like the more power you have, the more like so the more awareness you have, the more like power you just have in your life, like to make choices that then align with that, and then that like catapults you, I feel like, so much farther in whatever direction you decide to go. But
mhm.
yeah, so I've been trying to like let myself like, okay, if I do want to have 5 projects going, maybe that's fine, and I can work on a different one every day, and they'll all still move along. And that might be better than saying, no, I had to finish this before I start that. And let
Oh
my
yeah.
brain work the way it wants to work.
And I'm similar. Like I can't tell you how many books I've started and not finished, but I have also finished a lot of books. Like it's not
Right.
about how much you start versus how much you finish. It's about staying true to what you want to do. Because if you're wasting your life doing it because somebody else is expecting us to do it, then we're wasting our
Mm-hmm.
time. And now,
Absolutely.
not to say like, if I make a commitment, I'm going to stick with it, or I'm going to
Sure.
communicate that the commitment's no longer aligned with where I want to
Aligned.
go
Yeah.
moving forward. But there's another really good book about communication. It's called Nonviolent Communication. And it's all about how all of our communication um, is we're trying the best we know how to express unmet needs. So when
Mm.
a child's having a tantrum, or I'm trying to think of the word. There's a lot of like, he works with a lot of gangs and prisoners in this book. Like they're just angry and they're hurtful.
Mm,
They're just expressing an unmet need. Whereas when we're trying to communicate, like, this isn't working for me anymore, it's we're trying to
mm-hmm.
explain or communicate an unmet need. But this book gives a lot of really cool language and foundation to why that might be happening and how we can use it for ourselves too, like not even communicating with other people, but just like that
Totally, with
awareness,
yourself.
there's that word again, that awareness of how am I actually feeling right now, which is another
Mm-hmm.
autism thing. Like I see it with my husband all the time. I'm like, how are you feeling? And he's like, I'm fine. I'm like, you're not.
Yeah.
um, but sometimes we have a hard time recognizing our own feelings because we're
Mm-hmm.
so uh it's like a hyper vigilance to everything
Yep.
else that's going around us, because we're receiving so much information so much faster than every other neurotypical
Mm-hmm.
person. We're not just watching a show, we're hearing other things, we're seeing other things, we're thinking about other things. Sometimes we're on
Yeah.
multiple screens at once. Like
Yeah, yeah,
we're
yeah.
there's so much
So
input
much
that
happening.
sometimes, yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes the output, it's like I don't know what to output because there's too much input.
Totally, totally. My girlfriend will try to talk to me while I'm doing something else. Like if I'm on the phone with someone and you try to tell me the most basic thing, like I started the dishwasher, like I'm gonna be like, "What? Like I can't
Nope.
understand you. Like I cannot do both at the same time." Or like if I'm watching TV, like I need to pause that so I can hear what you're saying because like not happening at the same time. So funny.
100%. Yeah.
I also started to wonder if there anyone is neurotypical or if we're all just somewhere on this spectrum because I don't know that I've
I
met a neurotypical person.
Yeah, every time I meet somebody that says they're neurotypical, I'm like, but are you?
Are you sure?
Are you sure? I think a lot of it's lifestyle and environment too. Like children will
Hmm.
mimic their parents' behavior, and we, again, the hormones in our body dictate everything. So if we have high cortisol, we're in fight or flight all the time. It could be caused by food we're eating or mold. Don't even get me started on mold. We could do a whole podcast
Yeah.
on mold. Um, but yeah, I wonder about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been an amazing conversation so far. Is there anything else that you want to add or talk about before we maybe sign off? I know you got a busy day, so.
No, I think we talked about some really cool stuff, and I appreciate you having me on and letting me talk about things that I'm interested in, and
Yeah.
uh, learning more about me. It feels good to be seen and heard, and I appreciate
Yeah,
you having a
absolutely.
platform for that.
Yeah, well, I feel like I said, like I feel like your journey's been amazing, and it definitely needs to be need to talk about it or get it out there. I mean, I just think like so much of what we talked about today is so valuable, and the more people talk about it, and just make it more accessible for everyone, I think is really important. So thank you for sharing all of your wisdom. I feel like yeah, just wisdom dropped left and right today. So
Cool.
it's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. What I guess like any parting advice for listeners or if someone is wanting to like step more into the world that you're in, what would you recommend for them?
Yeah, I would my what is my piece of advice? I would say that learning how to lean into that trust is crucial. I think if you haven't learned how to trust yourself yet, get curious about how you can lean more into that, because at the end of the day, it's you. It's not about anybody else or what anybody else thinks or what anybody else does. And I tell my kids this all the time. I'm like, you can't control them. You can only be accountable for how you show up. And so I like to give that advice to adults too. It's like, what are you choosing? What are you showing up for? What are you engaging in? And be really, really proud of those choices so that you can feel good about what you're choosing to do. And oh my gosh, give yourself some grace sometimes too, because we can be really, really hard on ourselves. Forgiveness, trust, and curiosity is a good one too.
Absolutely. And where can people find you if they want to connect with you, follow you?
Yeah, I use my real name everywhere. So Melissa Yoder, Yoder. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. My TikTok is mostly videos of my shaved head because people find that very fascinating. And then
We
I'm
both
like,
joined the short hair club this year.
oh my, I'm so happy in all things sensory. I'm like, nothing's touching my neck, nothing's touching my face. I don't have to spend an hour washing and drying my hair.
Totally.
But yeah, I also have a link tree. It's linktree/Melissa Yoder, and I'm open to anybody reaching out messages, and I'm a pretty open book kind of person.
Thank you guys so much for watching.